You are Locked On Celtics Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Boston, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, that is certainly one way to close out the calendar year. The Celtics, you can say as expected, but did you really think they were going to beat the dreadful Toronto Raptors by 54 at the close of 2024 as they did at TD Garden on December 31? Jrue Holiday returning to the starting lineup. Celtics didn't really need that one, but yeah, they really did need that one. And with that, we welcome you into our latest edition of the Locked On Celtics Postcast. I'm Steve Lennox, longtime college basketball play-by-play announcer, former national show host on satellite radio and ESPN radio. Danny Ainge, one of my favorite Celtics players growing up, even had a number 44 practice jersey. You are right where you need to be on this New Year's Eve across the United States. You are locked on with the latest Locked On Celtics postcast as the Celtics pick up the victory. A convincing victory. A terrific victory. A victory you needed against a team and the Toronto Raptors that have now lost 11 straight games. We are providing reaction to every Celtics game on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, as well as the Locked On Celtics podcast feed, which you know is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. With our latest Locked On Celtics postcast, we are discussing the Celtics not hitting shots early on, but they brought the energy from the start of the game. You have to be happy with that. Now you just have to see it consistently over the course of 48 minutes, game in and game out. Yes, Jrue Holiday back in the lineup. Sam Hauser knocked down some threes. Payton Pritchard knocked down threes. Bench was strong. They closed out strong as well. I love the fourth quarter when Joe Mazzulla had the bench guys out there, and we'll get into that as well. And are the Raptors really this bad? The answer, yeah. We do want to hear from you, our everydayers and our first-timers. Join the conversation. Watching live on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, hit the comment button and join the Celtics conversation. You can also hit me up on the X. Follow Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel. Follow at Lennox on Hoops with questions, comments, or concerns. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter and one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. So both teams out of the gate shooting poorly, combining to go 0 for 10 from behind the three-point arc over the first 3 minutes. Now, you knew the Celtics were going to start knocking down shots. You just didn't know they were going to knock down 20 or more in a lopsided victory. 125-71 the final. R.J. Barrett last time out against the Celtics in Boston. Overtime win for the Celtics, having to win it at the buzzer in OT. Barrett in that game had a triple-double. Jakob Poeltl had a decent game. Didn't have anywhere near the game that he had in his previous trip into Boston against the Celtics earlier in the regular season. But after one quarter, the Celtics went on a run. 14-2 run. Pritchard hit a three, made it 16-8. That was a 14-2 run. White had a block in transition. White had a pair of blocks in the season. I had 4 blocks for the game in the victory. And then this was an interesting one for me. Talk about this right after out of the top. The Celtics ended up knocking down 5 threes in that first quarter. They did not have a free throw attempt in the first quarter. The 12 points scored by the Raptors, the fewest points the Celtics have given up in a quarter. But think about this at the end of each of the first 3 quarters, backbreakers, if you will. White had a floater to end the first quarter. He had 10 in the first, and the Celtics were up by 11. Then Jrue Holiday, end of the second quarter. Raptors, a turnover. Holiday, a 3 at the buzzer. And the Raptors in the final minutes of that second quarter had gotten to 7 a couple of times, but they got no closer. Holiday's 3 made it a 10-point game at the half. The Celtics had 45 points. And I know we do numbers of the night coming up in segment number 3. But the Celtics had 45 points and a 10-point lead at the start of the third quarter. They had 45 points in the first 24 minutes. They scored 45 points and knocked down 10 threes in the third quarter. Again, 45 at the half, 90 through 3 quarters with 45 points. And it was Tatum knocking down 4 threes. I think Tatum, well, this is just, tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic if you want. I think Tatum and the starters said, hey, let's put this game away. Let's be spectators in the fourth quarter. Tatum knocked down 4 of the 10 threes in that third, had 18 of his 23 in the third quarter. But Hauser had a 3 to make it a 26-point lead. Tatum and Hauser were threes to go up 34. Toronto had a challenge in the final minute of the third quarter, down by more than 30. That should not be allowed. First NBC Sports reference of the game, Drew Carter, Brian Scalabrine, tongue-in-cheek in the fourth quarter said, hey, there's no need to challenge here. I think you take the challenge. If you're down 30, you don't get to challenge in the second half. That's my new NBA rule. But you just take care of a Raptors team that, yes, they've dealt with injuries. I don't make that as an excuse, but there wasn't much there. There just wasn't a whole heck of a lot to the Raptors after that first quarter. Neither team got off to a great start in terms of shooting the basketball. The Raptors were 0 for 14 from behind the three-point arc, that into the early stages of the second quarter. Then they knocked down 2 in a row, ended up knocking down 6 threes in that second quarter. And again, they got to within 7 a couple of times, but no closer than that. Let's hit the comment button. Again, if you're with us on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, Happy New Year to everybody, especially if you're listening on the podcast later or even on New Year's Day. Appreciate that as well. John Corrales, Locked On Celtics podcast, also available wherever you get your podcast. But if you're with us live here on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, we do, yes, we do, we want to hear from you. So, I have no idea what this name is. That's all right, though. Pikatus, maybe? Second largest win in franchise history, and everyone participated, no matter the other team. Great win. I agree. Kick them when they're down. Step on their throat. The Raptors got what they deserved, right? What was the Tom Cruise, Paul Newman pool movie? Paul Newman is in the pool hall and just absolutely obliterates somebody, just takes the table. The guy, his opponent, says, I didn't deserve that. The Raptors deserved that. Paul Newman smiled at the guy with that Paul Newman smile and said, yeah, you did. The Raptors deserve that. I'm sorry, they just did. They've lost 11 in a row. They deserve that. And the Celtics bench I'll get into in the second quarter, the guys coming off the bench, garbage time, whatever you want to call it in that fourth quarter, defended and said, the heck with it. We're going to score. We're going to get ours. We'll touch on more of that coming up in segment number 2. But across the board, it was great to see Hauser going. Up 11 after 1, up 10. Didn't trail after the first quarter. Up 10 at the half. Up 37 going to the fourth. Toronto, I was just ugly. The Raptors, 35 points in the first half, 36 points in the second half. I mean, it was just brutal. From a Celtics fan standpoint, fun to watch. The Celtics scored 80 points in the second half. Toronto scored 36. Now, all of a sudden, are we going to say the Celtics are a defensive juggernaut? No, that was more Toronto than it was the Celtics defensively. But the Celtics did have energy on both ends. That's what Joe Mazzulla, that's what Tatum, that's what Brown have been talking about after games recently. Entering December 31, the final game on the calendar year, dropping 4 of 6 and kind of, scratching your head a little bit. Blowout victory against the Pacers. Pacers come back the next game, more energy. Took whatever Rick Carlisle told them between games, Friday and Sunday, and said, hey, better. We got to be better. And they were. They were the better team in the victory a couple of days ago. But the Celtics in that second half, 45 points in the third. And again, to a certain degree, I think the starters and haven't had that lately, right? Early on in the season, there were a handful of games where the Celtics, hey, the starters, at least for half of the fourth quarter, the second half of the fourth quarter, did not play. And you like those every once in a while. That does help over the course of an 82-game regular season schedule. Getting guys off the floor in the fourth quarter and never allowing the Raptors to get in. Those are the positives you take. Not the fact, okay, they scored 71. Yeah, you held them to 71 points, but they also held themselves to 71 points as well. It started with the first quarter. And again, the energy was there. Jrue Holiday returning, that helps. In the passing lane, first to the loose balls, the 50-50 balls. The Celtics did a lot of that in the victory, lopsided win against the Toronto Raptors. So, again, you don't think everything is right because this upcoming road trip, it's a test. January is a test. I think 16 games total, 10 of the 16 on the road. You've got 2, what I would describe as quote-unquote brutal road trips. When you have to go to Minneapolis, play the Timberwolves, and then go to Houston and play the next night, that's rough. That's rough, and we'll see how the Celtics respond. I said it the other day. Celtics have been home an awful lot. They've been sleeping in their own beds. They've been around friends and family an awful lot since Thanksgiving. Now they go out on the road. And it's 4 games in I think just a week. But again, a lot to like from the victory. Are they back on track 100%? See how they respond to success? See how they respond to a 54-point blowout win against just a dreadful. I mean, there are some bad teams. I mean, the Raptors right now are right there with the Washington Wizards, right? I mean, they're just a handful of real bad teams around the league this year. Do the Raptors win 15 games this year? Do they want to win 15 games this year? Drew Carter, Brian Scalabrine talked about it. They've got a couple of guys who may not be with the team in another month. Scotty Barnes is one of them. Barnes had 16. That led the way. In an NBA game, one player in the box score in double figures. Abaji, 1 for 7, 0 for 4 on the three-point line. Barnes was just 1 for 8. But just brutal in terms of their. I mean, the Celtics had 3 bench players in double figures. And again, we'll close this segment with simply the Toronto Raptors got what they deserve from the Celtics to close out the calendar year. They can now hit the road and go from there. What I liked from the bench, what I liked from the Celtics bench in the 54-point blowout victory is that they won by 50 or more. We're going to discuss more of what I like from the Celtics bench and the blowout victory against the Raptors next. Glad you're with us on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, your team every day. We are presented by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners get 40% off the first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions to apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. Again, if you're with us on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, join the conversation. Celtics close out the 2024 calendar year with a victory. The Celtics close out 2024 as the reigning NBA champs going into 2025. We've got just a few months until the NBA playoffs get underway in the early spring. And then are we talking about another trip to the NBA Finals? That's into June. So, 6 months away from perhaps defending last year's, or what is going to be last year's, NBA title as we are approaching the new year on the East Coast, Midwest, Mountain Standard Time, West Coast, in stores earlier in the day, talking with a woman from the Philippines, and she's saying, we're 2 hours away from what is our New Year's back home in the Philippines. And she said, I almost feel like it's that time where we should be celebrating. I said, well, you got a couple more hours. She was like, I got a couple more hours here. Then I'm going to be celebrating here on the East Coast. That's how she worded that. Again, if you're with us on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, join the conversation. I loved what the Celtics bench players did. And look, you want your starters to lead the way. Tatum, Brown for the Celtics. Porzingis in there as well, missing another game. It's great to see Jrue Holiday back. But Porzingis is still out, dealing with that left ankle, right? And you want that back to as close to 100% as possible. So we'll see if he plays over the next 4 games on the road trip. We'll see if that happens. But the bench players losing 4 of 6, the bench for Indiana, the bench in a couple of those losses, better than the Celtics bench. I'm glad the Celtics bench in that fourth quarter put up 35 points and outscored the Raptors 35-18. When they're on, great to see. When they're on, outstanding. Peterson knocked down a 3, had a couple of buckets, ended up with 5 points. Jordan Walsh was 4 of 6, and I believe for the second straight game, establishing a new career high in double figures with 10. One of 3 players off the bench with 10 or more, and one of 7 players total. Going to get into Al Horford here in segment number 2 as well. But Queta had a dunk to end the game on an assist from Jordan Walsh. Walsh knocked down a 3, then had an assist. Walsh, early in the fourth quarter, attacked the rim. Hey, Joe Mazzulla is not just talking about a starting 5. He's talking about the bench guys needed during the regular season, called upon in the playoffs that we just alluded to, come springtime, come June for the NBA Finals if you're going to get back there. These guys are going to be needed. Joe Mazzulla's comments in recent days about Jordan Walsh. He's coming along. And with that, Brian Scalabrine, sometimes here in segment number 2, we do the broadcaster's observation of the night. Scal said it of Jordan Walsh in the fourth quarter. The G League is working. Now, the G League isn't brand new. But for role players, for second-round picks, for free agent signings, you can go down to the G League if there's some time off. Jordan Walsh, Brian Scalabrine basically said the G League is working. It is. Players over the years have had to buy into the G League. It's not minor league baseball like we have in baseball if you're a baseball fan. But if you're in a slump in the big leagues, you can go down. If you need to work on timing, you need to work on things. They're running the same system in Maine as they are at the NBA level with the Celtics. And you're more the featured down there, or at that level in the G League if you go down there if you're Jordan Walsh. But I thought that was a great line from Scalabrine. The G League is working as Jordan Walsh had a strong fourth quarter. And again, you're playing for playing time. You're playing to get into that rotation. You're playing to be that next man up. You can do that in practice. You can do that in blowout victories in the fourth quarter. So again, I had no issue whatsoever. And the Toronto Raptors, I don't think did either, as they were outscored 35-18 in that fourth quarter. But on this particular night, the Celtics bench, the biggest lead in the game was 56. Are you kidding me? The biggest lead in the game was 56. There was one lead change. Once the Celtics took the lead back in the first quarter, they just went from there. But the bench, kudos to the Celtics bench. Hauser knocking down 4 threes. Took 7 shots total. Queta ended up with 8 points. Queta was more active. You could see it. You could see it from Nimi Queta along the way. Let's hit the comment section. Lands Geek. Yeah. All right. There you go. Appreciate checking in. Emmanuel checking in. Great to see the team dominate and give the bench players significant minutes. Again, from Emmanuel, touching on Jordan Walsh, seems to be locked in on both ends, defensively and offensively. Queta needs to be taken more seriously. Hey, Emmanuel, appreciate you checking in with us. A couple of first-timers here. Thank you very much. Again, if you're with us on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, join the conversation. Happy New Year to our international viewers and our international friends as well. But yeah, Queta and Walsh are both guys who need to give it to you more on the defensive end than the offensive end. You like their offense, you'll take it, but they've got to get after it on the defensive end. That is non-negotiable. They need to do that every time they step on the floor for the Celtics at the NBA level. They have to be able to give it to you consistently with the effort, with everything that they bring on the defensive end. It's non-negotiable. And there might be things that Joe Mazzulla sees in practice where he says, you know what, there's not the trust factor there. You're making the same mistakes. We need you to be better. Cornette, 13 minutes off the bench. 4 rebounds, couple of assists, and had a bucket. Cornette's one of those guys. Cato was doing it when Porzingis was out. And I'm wondering right now, Al Horford is in a slump, folks. Al Horford, 0 for 7 from the field, 0 of 6 from behind the three-point arc. I think he was 1 for 10 in the loss against Indiana a couple of days ago. Does Horford come off the bench? Do you give Kornet starts here? Do you give Cato starts here? Remember, Kornet started, I think it was back-to-back games in Charlotte early on in the regular season and put up some decent numbers. Now, for bench players, a utility guy at the big league level, it's called overexposure. Can they be exposed? If they start a couple of games or get some minutes off the bench in different situations over the course of a game, those guys can be overexposed. I wonder sometimes this season if Cato and Kornet have been there in those situations. Pritchard, I thought maybe early on in the season. His resume this year is enough for to say Pritchard is able to get the job done. Now, Hauser from the bench has had some issues with the back. You hope that's behind him best as possible. Seemed to be moving better in the victory against Toronto. But everyone had pep in their step from the get-go. And that's what's needed. In the first 20 games of the season, it was like as expected, just like this blowout win against the Raptors. Now, did we think they were going to win by 40, let alone 54? No. But the Raptors got what they deserved. But the bench guys, next man up, we call your number. I mean, how many times this season have we heard where bench guys, all of a sudden, it's like Joe Mazzulla is looking down the bench, and it's like, hey, let's go, in. Mazzulla has not given guys the heads up day before or game day. It's basically game's underway, warm-ups are over, I'm going to take a seat. No, let's go, you're in. Oh, okay. My time. It's go time. Peterson's dealt with that. Springer as well. And then you got guys like Cato and Kornet who, hey, I'm on my edge of my seat and ready to go if he calls me. There have been games where they haven't been called. And he is stuck to that 8-man rotation. But just balance. 22 threes, 22 of 43, 51%. It was one of those games where the three-point line was the layup line for the Celtics. 54% overall, 51% on the three-point line. And we'll get into numbers of the night coming up. We'll also look ahead. We'll keep up with your comments as well. If you want to join us, again, hit the comment button. If you're with us on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel, I do believe I've got some good numbers of the night coming up in our next segment. Locked On Sports Boston, your team every day. Tip of the cat to our everydayers, and also welcome aboard to our first-timers as well. We are sponsored by Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you are paying for twice. You might have a few subscriptions that you didn't even realize you were still paying for, and Rocket Money is able to make it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. That is something I might need for the new year. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, that helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings as well. Brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit for this upcoming 2025 year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. One of Rocket Money's best features is the subscription tracker that we've been telling you about. You can use it to cancel services you aren't using anymore, and you can save a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, you can set aside money for your future as well. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And again, the website, rocketmoney.com. Steve Lennox with you. Locked On Celtics postcast. Again, happy new year to one and all. Happy New Year to you and your families as well. Locked On Celtics postcast, part of the Locked On Sports Boston team, your team every day. So the Celtics will get into the numbers of the night from their 125-71 victory against the Toronto Raptors here in just a moment. The Raptors have now lost 11 in a row, and they look like a team that's lost 11 in a row. They look like a team that lost 7 in a row earlier this season. They look like a team that has just 7 wins on the year overall. The real Darrell, Jordan Walsh, has to get consistent playing time. How about now? Lands Geek, if you can check in with us. Not sure how far that was out. Do appreciate that if we're back on. Yeah, the red light was on for the mute button. Apologize for that. Celtics pick up the victory. Let's get into some of the numbers of the night. Not sure how that happened. 12-1 now. 12-1 now on the season when knocking down 20 or more threes. Celtics are now better. Okay, appreciate that. Celtics now, this was the starting lineup from opening night through when pretty much when, there were a couple of games where, but now 9-2 with Holiday, White, Horford, Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. I'm wondering if Horford better suited right now, at least maybe for a couple of games. Have him come off the bench. Jaylen Brown, a little distracted by that mute button. Jaylen Brown reaching a milestone, 3,000 career rebounds, did that in the first quarter. Celtics have won 10 in a row overall against Toronto, 7 straight at home in Boston against the Raptors. And the Celtics gave up 76 points in the paint to the Raptors in the overtime victory in the first meeting between the two. They gave up 71 points total in the victory to close out the 2024 year. So, points in the paint, 26. That's a lot different than 76. Celtics actually had 44 points in the paint themselves and 60 points from the bench. You'll take that. Part of numbers of the night. Here we go. 4 straight on the road. Minnesota, Houston, OKC. Looking forward to that matchup against the Thunder. And then to Denver. That's a brutal trip because you have to wrap up on the road in Denver where the air we know is thin. It's going to be an interesting one. That'll be an interesting one for the Celtics because you want to take both from Minnesota. You've already beaten the Timberwolves once this year. And then you go from there. 16 games, I mentioned it earlier. 16 games in the month of January on the calendar, 6 at home, 10 on the road. You also have a 4-game road trip later in January, Golden State, LA against both the Clippers and the Lakers on back-to-back nights, and then the Dallas Mavericks. Not going to be easy. But it's going to be fun to watch. And it's going to be fun talking with you about it on the Locked On Celtics postcast as well. Jrue Holiday making his return solid. Knocked down 4 threes. Defense. Hands in the passing lanes. Doing a lot of things that the Celtics just absolutely need. One more time, we'll remind you, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter and one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now, lockedondaily.com. Tip of the cap to our sponsors, Rocket RX and Rocket Money. Just think about it. As the calendar turns to the new year, we go all the way through the regular season, and then we may be speaking about the Celtics back in the NBA Finals 6 months from now, midpoint of 2025. We've had a lot of fun doing this over the course from October into November and December. The holidays are now behind us. We appreciate you being on board with us. Supporting our sponsors is supporting us with Locked On. Again, Rocket RX and Rocket Money. We're going to be with you in the new year. Timberwolves, Celtics, first of 4 in a row on a rough road trip for the Celtics. We'll see how they do going forward. As always, we do want to thank you for making Locked On Celtics with John Krause and the Locked On Celtics postcast your first listen every day. Locked On Celtics podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcast. We also appreciate you checking in with us live when we go live after each Celtics game on the Locked On Sports Boston YouTube channel as well. Locked On Sports Boston, number one place to hang out immediately after every game. Happy New Year, everyone. Be safe. Be happy with your friends and family. Locked On Sports, your team, your Celtics every day.